This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
10:06 is the time. Congratulations to Maria Corina Machado, the winner of this year's Nobel Peace Prize. It could be Donald Trump next year. My understanding of how this scheme works, how this prize works, is that it is unlikely to take into account more recent events. I thought it only took into account events from 2024, because the nominations I thought had to be in by January of 2025, which would have been very tricky for Donald Trump to be included. But it may be a little more nuanced than that. However, it was always close to impossible that something that is yet to be enacted could lead to an actual award. But who here has any faith in the old rules of what's possible and impossible? Hands up if you've still got faith in the old order and its ability to resist sweeping and violent assaults upon everything from the rule of law to simple tradition. I don't know how this reaches your ears. I really don't. I hope I've established over the last few years two things. Number one, that I've been completely right about everything that Donald Trump is and would do. And number two, that I have very little competition when it comes to holding him in the lowest imaginable regard. But in the course of yesterday's programme, I kind of found myself thinking that his toxic character is intrinsic to this ceasefire. I mean, you know, whether or not the enormous bribe of a jumbo jet was a significant factor in the process of him deciding to become the first president in history to essentially pull the rug from beneath of the feet of the Israeli prime minister and tell him that his desire to continue this war ad infinitum was now toast, was now over. And nobody else could have done that, because there's a brilliant piece in the Times today by a journalist called Catherine Philp that I cannot recommend highly enough. I was going to share it earlier, but if I'd shared it, I'd have got a dozen messages going, do you know it's behind a paywall? To which I can't reply individually going, no, I had no idea it was oh, really? Journalists are getting paid for journalism. Oh, whatever will it end? But it's a brilliant piece. Not least because it points out that the deal as it stands was pretty much on the table 18 months ago, but there was no way that Netanyahu was going to sign it, and there was no way, and this is really crucial, and this is why those of us who can see Donald Trump for precisely what he is, a self-confessed sex offender, serial felon, dangerous liar, inspirer of armed insurrection against his own seat of government, when all of the things that people who use phrases like Trump derangement syndrome have to presumably be comfortable with or even approving of, up to and including the woman who accused him of rape that he sued for libel and then subsequently lost. And all of these things, I don't know if they are sources of derangement, but they should be sources of deep, deep disgust. Of course they should. Politicians have an excuse, I suppose. Prime ministers have to kind of keep him sweet because of the damage he could do to them if he didn't. But journalists, commentators, pundits, columnists, they've got no excuse at all for not expressing daily the deep, deep disgust at having such a hideous human being in the most powerful seat in the world. But it is precisely that hideousness that has allowed him to do what he's done. Because I don't think anybody else would ever have said to an Israeli prime minister, we will withdraw support. You will be on your own unless you sign here. And the other side of the negotiating table, they were ready to sign 18 months ago. It's all in an essay by Gershon Baskin, the negotiator who presided over the freeing of Israeli soldiers, or the Israeli soldier, forgive me, Gilad Shalit, in 2011. And he's been on the case of the current peace agreement and had it in place in pretty much September 2024. Hamas had agreed to it in the last months of the Biden administration, but Biden was never going to push hard enough against Netanyahu, and Netanyahu refused point blank to consider it. So, I mean, the tragic subtext of that, of course, is that every death since September of 2024, so just over 12 months of genocide, in Gaza was utterly unnecessary. If Joe Biden had had the wherewithal to put the kind of pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu that Donald Trump has done, then tens of thousands of people, including women and children, would still be alive. And, it doesn't well, of course it knocks the gloss off what has happened, but it probably will go underreported by the kind of people who think that I'm somehow responsible, personally, a caller to the end of Nick's show, if you weren't listening, for fomenting hatred, when all I've done since the very beginning of this conflict was insist upon valuing a Palestinian life as highly as an Israeli one. It's incredible how upsetting some people find that, isn't it? And yet, of course, looking at the death toll and the continuing denials of the horrors that have unfolded, it's not surprising at all. It may have been something of a lesson for you, though, to discover just how delusional and warped a lot of the coverage of these issues can be. Of course, the only way in which you can get away with persuading people of things that are not true is by banning journalists from accessing reality and reporting back on it to you. There is only one reason why Benjamin Netanyahu's administration has, from the very start, refused to let people like Matt Fry, appearing at the end of Nick's show also there, and others, report on what's going on the ground in Gaza, and that is because they do not want you to know. They do not want anyone to know. Most of all, they do not want their own citizens. They do not want Israeli people to know the scale of what has now been adjudged by various international experts, both academic and members of United Nations commissions, to be a genocide. That's, again, a very, very simple truth. You may not have known that. You may not have known at the beginning of this nightmare that Benjamin Netanyahu had encouraged Qatar to fund Hamas so that the two-state solution that both sides, Netanyahu and Hamas, despise and abhor and reject, would move ever further out of reach. That's not an opinion. That's counting, something which the inimitable Noga Tarnopolsky in Jerusalem reminded us of yesterday. So much stuff that you can only really control if you can keep a lid on coverage. And of course that includes, as we had a little example of just 15 minutes ago, maligning journalists for having the temerity to actually tell the truth about what is going on rather than simply spouting propaganda for either side. So those are all facts that you may not have been aware of when this began. The Guardian this week listed 17,000 children who've been killed, with the caveat that that won't be the end of it, because God knows how many more will be found when they start sifting through the rubble that Gaza has been reduced to. All of which points to some explanation of why every sensible article I've read, actually every article I've read, speaks directly of the pariah status that Benjamin Netanyahu has now visited upon Israel. And it's a decision that nobody really seems to challenge, up to and including him, when he spoke to the United Nations and the room emptied as he drew breath and decided or stated that Israel, clearly not aware of what Donald Trump had up his sleeve in the simple context of withdrawing unquestioning support and providing... Listen, don't get me wrong, for me, it's one of the great curses of being objective. I think this peace deal's too kind to Hamas. I really do. Top priority should be the Palestinian civilians and the remaining hostages. But I think this peace deal is way too kind to Hamas. But it was the only way you were going to get it over the line. And you could have got it over the line 18 months ago if Joe Biden had been prepared to put the thumbscrews on Benjamin Netanyahu, which, of course, he wasn't for fairly obvious reasons. Trump doesn't care about anything except Trump, and this is the best possible result for Donald Trump, and that is the only and the abiding reason why it has actually come about. But this pariah status, and Netanyahu himself alluded to it when he talked of Israel becoming like Sparta. I mean, if you don't have a classical education, think of it as Millwall Football Club. No one likes us, we don't care. And that's something Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to do. It's something that perhaps Nick's caller, who was very rude about me a moment ago, wants to do, to turn all of us into people who don't like Israel. Because that way you can perpetuate the circumstances which allow you to undertake hideous carnage on your very own doorstep. But I refuse to fall into that trap. I refuse to abandon my lifelong belief that the modern state of Israel is a necessary and profoundly important phenomenon. What I don't know is what Benjamin Netanyahu has done to the international status, the international reputation of the country, because I've got a horrible feeling that some people, when they hear Israel, will hear people like Caroline in Finchley spitting bile about your humble, friendly radio presenter, or they will hear the word Israel and all they'll think of is what has happened in Gaza since October the 7th, 2023. They won't think about the proud history of the population, of the nation, of the contribution to the world. They won't think about the appalling provocations that have been suffered. They won't understand the historical context that has unfolded since 1948. None of those things will register in the minds of many, many people who will hear the words Israel and see the word genocide. It's a horrible situation. And I kind of hope I'm wrong. But it would appear otherwise, because again, the domestic equivalent of trying to ban journalists from getting into Gaza is trying to ban people expressing solidarity with Palestinian suffering from expressing solidarity with Palestinian suffering. The Times carried an interesting article yesterday, and these idiot students spouting hideous thoughts and slogans on campuses across the country have been portrayed as like an enormous force. The Times actually counted them. So the Times' analysis, and I'm not a fan of what Tony Gallagher has done, the editor has done to the Times, but sometimes a stop clock is correct. They used words like dozens or less than 100. And to be clear, that's too many people expressing Jew hatred or expressing support for what Hamas did on October the 7th. But it would be a tiny proportion of a tiny number of people that were doing that. So the British media moves in, most of the British media moves in to pretend that all protesters are terrorist sympathisers. Suella Braverman was doing it at the very outset. And the failure of it has been spectacular in the public mind. It might have worked on Daily Mail front pages or on Facebook groups, but the failure to carry the public with the Israeli administration has been absolutely hideously unsuccessful. The attitude that you will have, not towards Jewish people, of course, because that is sadly what you have to pretend is the case in order to ignore the question of how you could ever have stayed silent about murder on this scale. The word Israel is damaged. And I don't think that's an opinion. I think that's counting. I think all of the polling shows it. So what has this 2-year-long campaign done to you? How has it changed your understanding of the world, and that part of the world in particular? And how much damage has Benjamin Netanyahu, who is less popular in Israel than Donald Trump is, riddle me that if you want, again, according to polling, which is not, scientific, but it's generally quite reliable, how much damage has Benjamin Netanyahu done to the modern state of Israel, to its international reputation? Why am I reading in newspapers that were very warm towards him just 2 years ago that Israel has achieved a sort of pariah status? And what has he done and why did he do it? He could have signed this deal 18 months ago. Could have been forced to sign it if Joe Biden had demonstrated a little bit more, you could say backbone, or you could say if Qatar had bought him a $400 million jumbo jet. What has this done? What has it done? The trouble started. I didn't realise I had so much to say about this. In terms of rhetoric and reputation, and not in terms of carnage and bloodshed, I remember the sick, cold feeling on October the 7th as the details began to come through. And then the genocide in Gaza has been more of a drip feed, but there have been moments of comparable horror. It's just been an incremental, growing abomination, hasn't it, rather than a single sick second. But I remember when Suella Braverman, I kind of knew people who'd been on a protest, and I remember Suella Braverman trying to portray them all as Hamas sympathisers. I remember thinking, this is really stupid. This is really stupid. You need to recognise two things. You need to recognise that many people are so generationally traumatised by the Holocaust that they can never conceive of an Israeli government doing anything wrong. If it is sold to them as self-defense, if it is sold to them as security, they will never be able to turn around. And this is as true of the diaspora and as it is of the domestic population. They will never be able to, because I've said this phrase 1 billion times. It's where you go when it starts happening again. So the responsibility of all decent, honest commentators, journalists, people, public thinkers, people trying to get their head around this stuff, the responsibility of all of us should actually have been critical friend to say this cannot go unanswered, this abomination of October the 7th, but do not sell the goodwill that Israel enjoys and needs. Do not sacrifice it upon the altar of Benjamin Netanyahu's survival. And that's what I've learned. They did. And they continue to. UK media, columnists, journalists, callers to Nick, they continue to sacrifice the goodwill of lifelong supporters of the State of Israel upon the altar of Benjamin Netanyahu's self-serving barbarism. And you know, that distinction is so clear. I'm criticising a world leader, I'm criticising a politician, I'm criticising an alleged war criminal. And yet, you know, there'll be someone texting me or ringing Nick to say, that's anti-Semitic. How dare you criticise an alleged war criminal for alleged war crimes? You're anti-Semitic. And you sort of think, the damage you do to that hideous tradition, that bilious practice of anti-Semitism, the damage you do to it when you apply it to somebody who's condemning an alleged war criminal for alleged war crimes. The damage you do when somebody who talks of the necessity and the value and the unique status, because that's when I upset everybody else, the unique status of Israel in the context of 20th century and 21st century history. Someone who understands it and defends it all the time. Remember when Suella Braverman had a pop at is it the daughter of a Holocaust survivor or an actual Holocaust survivor? The damage you do when you just go football club on something as nuanced and difficult as this is absolutely immense. And so that's the question that I have for you. What's changed in the way you look at the world? 0345 6060 973. What's changed in your understanding of that particular corner of the Middle East? And I will actually ask the question, because everywhere I look, I'm reading about how Benjamin Netanyahu has rendered Israel a pariah state, how this could never have happened if he hadn't hemorrhaged so much goodwill and international support for so long. How much damage has he done? When he goes, how much of that damage stays? When he goes, how much of that pariah status remains? When he goes, how much of that ludicrous ambition to become Sparta, to celebrate isolation, to revel in alienation, how much of that stays? How much of that gets hung around the neck of every Israeli? Please God, none, but that's naive, that's idealistic. How much damage has Netanyahu done to the Israeli cause? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. What have you learned from the events of the last 2 years? And how much damage has he done to the Israeli cause? It's 10:25.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 26 minutes after 10, and it is a little early, perhaps, to be pausing the peace process and presuming it will sustain. It's far from guaranteed, but it is the fundamental basis of today's conversation. It will work, it will sustain, it will hold. What has changed? What have the last 2 years taught you? And what has Benjamin Netanyahu done to the modern state of Israel? Nitzan is in Northampton. Nitzan, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Quite nervous. It's the first time I'm speaking to you.
It's only me.
I hear you saying that to all the newcomers. I was born in Israel. I came to England when I was 9 years old. Both my parents were born out of Israel. They were both born in former Yugoslavia and survived the Holocaust. My dad especially, because he was in Belgrade, being a big city and under German occupation. I lost my grandparents in the Holocaust, his parents, and he became an orphan at the age of 9 with his brother and his sister. Now, his sister was really very small, and friends of them that weren't Jewish adopted her. And him and his brother were given new identities and were put in an orphanage, a boys' home, basically, a Christian boys' home. So the Holocaust has a significant meaning in Jewish people's lives. And the thing that I hate the most, I am sorry, let me just gather myself.
You take all the time you want, Nitsa.
The thing that I hate the most is what Netanyahu has done has diminished the effect of the Holocaust. Oof. No longer will Israelis, Jewish people say, look what they did to us, because people will point out what we did in Gaza.
I mean, a lot of people are going to, as you know, a lot of people who share your faith, your religion, are going to really, really struggle with that as a statement. I completely respect your right to make it, but I suppose I have to point out the numbers don't bear comparison, do they?
The numbers don't make the numbers don't make comparison. We don't even know the extent, as you said, until the big dig in the rubble.
We know it's not going to be 6 million.
Fascists. Netanyahu sits in a government with 2 fascists.
That's true.
So, if we agree that the Nazis were fascists, the people who orchestrated Gaza are fascists.
How hard has this been for you personally, given your family's history of Holocaust survival and indeed Holocaust murder?
Yeah, we expect. How can I put it? It's difficult because I've always been against it. I've always been pro-peace. I've always been a humanitarian. I saw this coming a long, long time ago. I don't know if a 2-state solution is going to happen purely because of the number of population in such a small area. There are 750,000 settlers already in the West Bank. Where are they going to go, James? Let's say we draw the 67 borders. Where are they going to go? It's a logistics problem. It's not even whether we want to or not.
It's not an opinion, it's counting, which is
750,000 people. Israel is already overpopulated. It's a tiny country. People don't realise.
There's an awful lot of things people don't realise. Something you understand much better than I do. But I do want to ask you what your response is to the events of the last 24 hours. I've got no idea what you're going to say, by the way, Nitsan, actually.
Hopeful.
Good. Me too.
There's only one thing I want to add to our conversation, yeah?
Yes.
About 3-4 weeks ago, I was in Israel. I had to go for a family emergency, but we won't go into that.
Okay.
That forced me to be in Tel Aviv for about 5 days. Now, you walk around Tel Aviv, James,
yeah,
and you don't feel it. It was horrifying to me. It was really, really horrifying to me. You walk in Tel Aviv, the restaurants are full, the bars are full. People, you don't see as many tourists, yeah, that's fair enough. But they can always count on the Jewish tourists from the rest of the world in Israel. But the way of life is going like nothing's happened. And you're talking about from Tel Aviv to Gaza, you're talking about 45 miles, and a lot of people don't realise that.
And you find that incredible.
From Northampton to, let's say, Hemel Hempstead, and people are starving there, and people are being bombed there. I walked along the beachfront because Tel Aviv is a coastal city. Along the whole of it is along the beach, and people, are doing yoga on the beach and playing volleyball, and you're thinking, why are you? You want to go up to them and shake them and say, "What are you doing? Do you know what's happening?"
Do they know what's happening?
You got to be ultra blind, stupid, and but even the people that know what's happening in the rest of the world, Jewish people. How many Jews can you find on the telephone that will stand up for Israel despite of everything they know already? Commentators. They're aware of what's going on. They just choose to shut their eyes, put their fingers in their ears and go, la, 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 la.
There's a bit of plausible deniability as well, which I suppose is created by the refusal to let journalists in that you can claim that all information coming out is therefore biased or corrupted, and you refuse to let in anybody whose reputation would be insulated from those accusations. I don't know.
Not in this modern world. I'm sorry, James.
No,
if you want to know what's happening in this modern world, you will find out what's happening in this modern world. But if you don't want to know, that's the thing. They can have deniability because they didn't want to know. They didn't look into it.
I'm not going to argue with you, obviously, and I fully understand that when we talk about genocide, it's about intent, not about numbers. I was just illustrating the statistical differences between the.
Do you know what I said to somebody that will horrify you?
Go on.
I said,
"Be careful. Be sure you want to say this on the radio."
Yes, I do want to say it, because it's me saying it, not you.
Yeah.
The IDF don't need concentration camps. They're killing them in their homes and on their streets. And how dare we say IDF? They're not a defense force. We should call them the Israeli army. They're not a defense force.
Well, that was the point I was about to make, actually. And it was simply the observation that I wonder whether I should have as much sympathy with it as I do listening to you, but I do think of other families with a history like your family and the knowledge that if or when it starts happening again, there is now a place outside Europe where they and you can go and be safe, and therefore anything and everything done to safeguard that security is justifiable.
Are you believing what you're saying?
No, I'm telling you what I think other people believe. I'm telling you what I know other people believe, and I have worked very hard to reach a place of sympathy for that position.
As opinionated as you are,
yeah,
and the luxury that you have in LBC compared to someone like the BBC is you're able to tell people your opinion.
Yes. It is my opinion that many people...
Let's put it this way. Your vision of the world and your politics very much reflects my own.
Okay.
And I know you don't believe that.
No, but I believe that a lot of people do. It's because I've been struggling for 2 years to understand a mindset that doesn't reflect what you've just described, that doesn't feel all of the things that you feel, even reluctantly. And it is, I think, because protecting the place that you go to when it starts happening again trumps, pardon the pun, it trumps everything else, even the suffering, even the carnage in Gaza. That exists as a worldview.
Do you know what one of my sisters says?
No.
She's married a US guy, and she currently lives in Seattle. But she's in Israel at the moment. And when she comes and visits me here, she says to me, because I have a British passport, But she says to me, because the only passport she has at the moment is an Israeli passport.
Right.
And she says to me, I'm stateless. I don't belong in Israel. I don't belong in the United States. I'm stateless. I haven't got a state. And that's difficult because, you know, the other thing that I spotted when we...
Mate, I'm so late for the news. It feels such an inadequate observation given the power of what...
Just one more thing.
Go on,
Do you
then.
know what else I noticed when I was in Tel Aviv?
Go on.
What we have done in 75 years is truly amazing.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably amazing.
I'm glad you ended on that note. I really am, and I'm very glad you rang me today. Are you glad you did?
I am, yes.
Well, I hope we talk again on in happier circumstances.
So do I.
Take care, Sam. It's 10:38. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:41. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Extraordinary response that you would expect from that extraordinary contribution from Nitsan. I found it very powerful, very moving. I don't know whether hearing someone at the end of Nick's show inciting hatred against me made me a little bit more susceptible to Nitsan's clear compassion and humanity, or whether indeed he heard it and was prompted to ring in as a consequence of that. But here we go. And for the record, Nick dealt with it as I would expect a trusted colleague to do, and as I deal with some criticism of him, although never, I don't think, incitement to hatred in quite such a vile fashion from Caroline in Finchley. But there we go. I wonder how many people Nitsan speaks for. I really do, because the question he answered is simple and straightforward. Knowing, as we do now, that Netanyahu could have signed this deal 18 months ago, and responsibility for his refusal to do so lies in large part with Joe Biden, what on earth has been achieved in the interim? What on earth has been achieved in the months that have elapsed since Hamas were ready to sign it? They'd agreed it in September of 2024, so not quite 18 months. This is the testimony of Gershon Baskin, a key, historically successful negotiator who's written an essay revealing his own involvement. This deal could have been done a long time ago. Hamas agreed to all the same terms in September 2024 in what became known as the 3 weeks deal that I had received in writing and voice message in Arabic and in English. But at that point, the response of the Israeli negotiators was that the Prime Minister did not agree to end the war. And of course, this is absolutely crucial information to any understanding of the issues, but that is why many, many people will either not access it or not heed it. They will pretend it's not true. I don't think they can quite accuse Gershon Baskin of being a Hamas propagandist, but anybody else who's been telling the truth for the last 2 years has run the risk of being labelled in that way by people up to and including British Home Secretaries like Suella Braverman, who was even prepared to sort of publicly insult an actual Holocaust survivor, Joan Salter, MBE. I tell that story in my last book. What has he done? What has he done to Israel? Leaving at the door any desperate attempts to conflate Jew hatred with criticism of Israel, which is, I guess, the only way you've been able to defend Benjamin Netanyahu, by pretending that condemning and criticising him is anti-Semitic or is hatred of Jewish people. Hatred of genocide can't be hatred of Jewish people. That's just ridiculous. It's intellectually bankrupt. Praying, if that is your want, that the peace process holds. What damage has been done? I'm going to take another break now. The show has been very topsy-turvy today. My introduction was incredibly long, and then Nitsan came along and said, hold my pint, effectively, while he made an incredibly long contribution as well. I've got plenty more calls to come. I also want to find out a little bit more about the person who's actually won the Nobel Peace Prize, and I'm also very grateful to you for the extremely kind words with which you are currently bombarding me. But we will try to get the show back on something vaguely akin to an even keel after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Mysteries to solve. Someone just messaged me to say, James, did Donald Trump win the Nobel Peace Prize? More on that shortly. And also, I failed to solve a mystery yesterday, having promised that I would. A lot of people worried that because when you WhatsApp me, the blue ticks don't appear on your message, so you're worried that I don't see it or that you've been blocked. We're looking into why the status of your ticks has changed, but I can categorically assure you that I'm seeing all of your messages. I know that I'm seeing all of your messages because I'm seeing all the ones complaining about being blocked while I'm reading them, which means and also I don't think you can block. But anyway, regardless, I can see your messages. Do not worry about the ticks. I wonder how many people had the name Maria Corina Machado tripping off their tongue on a regular basis prior to this morning. My next guest did. Dr. Christopher Sabatini is a senior research fellow for Latin America, US and the Americas program at Chatham House, and he joins me now. It's a bit of a curse, I suppose, that she has received this award in the shadow of Donald Trump's naked lust for it, Christopher. But let's not talk about him. Let's talk instead about her. What is the rationale for the Nobel Peace Prize today?
James, I think we should get back to what it means later for Trump and his support for the Venezuelan opposition. But for sure, now, a little bit about Maria Corina Machado. She has been a longtime civic activist. I've actually known her for 20 years now.
Gosh.
She had started a election observation organization, then switched over to politics, was elected to the National Assembly. And she'd really been just a member of a large pool of opposition leaders for a long time. But last year, actually the end of 2023, in anticipation of the presidential elections in July last year, the opposition held a nationwide primary in which she was selected as the candidate. And she was barred from participating in the election by the Maduro-controlled, Maduro being the president of Venezuela, his controlled Supreme Court. So she threw her weight behind a stand-in, and by all accounts, she and her stand-in won the election 70 to 30%, but Maduro claimed that they had won, never producing any evidence of that, although the evidence had been demonstrated by the opposition and independent observers that happened to be on the ground. And since then, she's gone into hiding. No one knows where she is in Venezuela. Her campaign team had to hole up in the Argentine embassy surrounded by security forces for months. There were more than 2,000 arrests after the election. So she's courageously filled the vacuum of a very fractured opposition, competed in the elections even though she wasn't officially on the ticket. And during that, it was truly inspiring watching her fill the plazas and streets of Caracas and all over the country with these enthusiastic supporters who just basically wanted change. They wanted an end to the brutality of the Maduro government, its economic collapse, and its corruption.
What's she like as a person?
She's, I'll confess this. I think to be a human rights activist at that level, she's very charismatic.
Yes.
She's also very stubborn, and I think it's true of a lot of human rights activists. You don't rise to that level of sort of resistance, and sort of if you don't have a certain amount of mettle and resist and stubbornness about you. So she's tough. They refer to her as the Iron Lady. She's very conservative, which is a surprise because Venezuela used to be a very moderate country in terms of its politics, but that's changed under Nicolas Maduro. She's very charismatic. She's very courageous. Her family lives outside Venezuela. She's opted to remain in Venezuela, and she also is a great showman, and I mean that as a positive sense. She, during the campaign, because there were arrest warrants out for her, she would appear at these rallies oftentimes, especially after the stolen elections, and hidden and then sort of very, theatrically take off a hood and demonstrated that it was her, and people would flock. It was great showmanship, but that's what people needed then.
Is it a surprise, this announcement? I sense it is.
It is a surprise for a number of reasons. First of all, the Nobel Prize Committee has tended to ignore the disaster in Venezuela for a long time. This has been 20 years in the making, more than 20 years in the making, and so it's really been quite silent. I think again, this election helped to shine a spotlight on Venezuela and on one person in particular. So I think it made it much easier for them to really grab a toehold, if you will, on this. And so, yes, it's a surprise. We'll see how this plays out in terms of both U.S. politics. Trump has mobilized more than 8 ships off the coast of Venezuela, 10 F-35s and a nuclear submarine. supposedly taking out drug boats that are running, although it's actually intending to rattle the Maduro government. Now, we'll see how Trump feels since he so coveted this prize, if he'll be a little bit jealous, and whether he'll either sort of ramp up his rhetoric and pressure on the Maduro government, or maybe, who knows, out of just petty jealousy, do something else.
Well, and where does that tension come from? Because from what you've told us about Maduro, the playbook he's operating from sounds like one that Donald Trump also consults on a regular basis, whether it's election result denial or trying to criminalise criticism or indeed lock up dissenters. Where's the tension in that relationship?
Like the good journalist you are, James, you're going to bring me out to say some things I probably shouldn't. The truth is that a lot of Venezuelan opposition leaders who are so want to remove Maduro are willing to embrace Trump, who's engaging in the exact same playbook. Yeah. The difference is that Maduro's a leftist, self-proclaimed leftist. He's actually more just of a corrupt oligarch. And so they simply want him out. And I've said this to the opposition oftentimes, that it bothers me as an American that they're willing to countenance vast executive overreach, violation of due process, and other things just to remove their hated president, while endorsing someone who's doing the exact same thing within his own country.
So Trump's animus would be the alleged leftism in the context of why he would see him as an ideological enemy.
That's part of it. It's also, if you remember, during the 2024 campaign, Trump made Venezuelan immigrants one of a major issue, including the argument that this gang, the Trinidad, had taken over a town in Colorado. That wasn't true at all, in fact. But he made that a rallying point, and he argued that Maduro had thrown open the doors of mental facilities and prisons and sent them all to the United States, and that the crime spike in the United States due to undocumented immigration was primarily coming from Venezuela. So for him, too, this is a domestic issue. He may be sort of brethren with Maduro in the autocratic playbook, but for Donald Trump, especially his domestic agenda, it's all about immigration and rounding up, as he says, the bad hombres.
So Venezuelans successfully othered from Trump's point of view. This is so interesting. I'm a little bit embarrassed that so much of it is new to me, but there's no final question. I mean, we said we wouldn't, but I fully understand why we can't avoid him. I mean, it would have stung even more if she was opposed to a regime that he liked, right? I mean, I'm just thinking about the sort of mental, the psychological trauma that he will be enduring when he wakes up later today.
That's the difficult thing to imagine, James. But for the moment, just generally. But for the moment now, there's also a little bit of intra-government rivalry here, because Marco Rubio is the one who embraced Maria Corina Machado.
Right.
Donald Trump has been embracing, up until recently, negotiations with the Maduro government, thinking he could broker a deal with them. So within the regime, basically this was also endorsement of Marco Rubio's full-throated endorsement. I mean, he's the one who constantly refers to Maria Corina Machado as the Iron Lady, legitimate president or ruler of Venezuela. So this will also stick in the craw a little bit, because he's going to have to look across his cabinet table and see his Secretary of State, who was advocating for a long time.
You could blame him for it. Why did you have to big her up like that?
Exactly. Could you pick someone else? Me?
Oh, Christopher, that was a lot more entertaining than I was expecting. Never mind illuminating. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers. That's Christopher Sabatini, Dr. Christopher Sabatini there, Senior Research Fellow for Latin America, US and the Americas. At Chatham House, I don't think we've ever had a guest from Chatham House who hasn't been brilliant, have we? They're so good, the Chatham House people. 10:56 is the time. Back to the conversation. There's some echoes there about my enemy's enemy being my friend almost, or, of course, people being prepared to, in Venezuela, people being prepared to countenance Trump's appalling nature and behaviour because they think he might help in getting rid of the person they want to get rid of. So you embrace the toxicity in order to achieve what you want, which is, arguably what has happened in the Middle East. But Erica is in Twickenham. She's been waiting a long time to tell us her answers to the question of what has actually changed or been achieved or being lost in the last 2 years. Erica, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thank you. Like Nixon, I'm also a bit nervous as it's my first time calling.
Welcome.
But Thanks. I want to say first, thank you for your somewhat more balanced presentation of the situation than some of the other presenters. I've been finding it quite distressing to hear how one-sided the reporting and the call-ins have been on some of the other programmes.
You are allowed to ring them as well, you know.
I did try the other day. It didn't get on, but I do wish there was a slightly greater recognition of all the Palestinians have endured in the decades before 7th of October. There's too much of taking October 7th as a starting point, as if Hamas started the war on October the 7th. But anyway, you're talking about how's the view of Israel changed in the last 2 years. Well, just to say that I visited Israel in 2004, right. So I've been aware since then of like flagrant injustice of the system. I went to Tel Aviv, I went to different places around Israel and the West Bank, experienced the horror of the checkpoints, saw how it was an apartheid system basically for Palestinians. So I've been aware of that, and I'm guilty of having let it become a background topic in the years since, and I think a large part of that, it was the Oslo Accords that it put Palestine out of the world's consciousness. And because of that, for most of the last 2 years, I had just not wanted to read or hear anything. I know that it's totally unjust, and it's just so distressing to read and hear anything. But as things started escalating some months ago, I did start listening and learning and seeing what's going on. And yes, most of it is through social media, because you can't get any truth on the mainstream media. And it's been shocking to see what you hear Israeli politicians saying, what you see the IDF recording and documenting, and their attitude towards this, what you see Israeli society voting and polling on, that most of them are saying that the escalation should be even more in Gaza, that Gaza should be wiped out, etc. So that hasn't been very favourable. But also what has been highlighted is more facts about the history, and particularly the distinction between Zionism and Judaism, which I think is a crucial and fundamental distinction that not enough of you clarify or highlight enough. And the blurring between the two is extremely dangerous, and I think it's at the root of a lot of this. A lot of the upset that.
But there is genuine anti-Semitism out there. There always has been, as you know. But the conflation of criticism of Israel with hatred of Jews has been hideous to watch. I
mean, I've been on protests. I haven't seen any hatred of Jews. The beautiful, wonderful Jews who join on
that doesn't mean the people who have are lying.
I mean, I haven't experienced that. I'm exposed to a lot of social media and the protests and stuff. I have not seen hate against Jews. I have seen anti-Zionism.
I've even seen it on Blue Sky.
Okay, but let's talk. Do you know
the presumption that every Jew supports Netanyahu is anti-Semitic?
Do you know the difference between Zionism and Judaism?
Of course I know the difference between Zionism and Judaism. One's a religious faith and one's the belief in the existence of a geographical entity in the 20th and the 21st century. It gets confusing when people use Zionism to describe people who don't think Israel can do anything wrong in the context of defending itself or its population. So even within that one word, there are confusions and difficulties. But I'm going to be late for the news again. But I want you to tell me, because it sounds like you were already possessed of a very strong opinion on these matters long before this was happening.
But I also had Israeli friends, and I have lots of Jewish friends.
Still do.
Yeah, I do. I mean, the Israeli friends and I have different opinions on what's going on there.
Plenty of people in Israel who are unhappy with what has unfolded. Not as many as you would like to see, or perhaps I would like to see. But your point, I think, and I'm going to be very... Hang on, I'm already late for the news. I just want to be clear I've understood you. So much for getting the show back on an even keel times-wise. You just think that there's a lot more widespread understanding of some of the issues than there was before before Hamas embarked on the terrorist atrocity of October the 7th, but more pertinently, before Benjamin Netanyahu spent 2 years essentially drawing attention to what his administration was doing in Gaza.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more recognition of
I do too, and that's why everyone's
power and interest of the Zionist dream. It's a Western colonization dream, and that's what people are opposed to. And I've got
to go to the news. Thank you, but the colonization is not the same as genocide. I mean, it sounds a little bit lily-livered, but you can have one without the other. And for the record, I completely, always have been, always will be, in support of the modern state of Israel. Expansionism, no. Settlements, no. Illegal settlements, of course not. But the difficulty of conducting a conversation, even when you can't agree on the definition of words, is just immense. It's huge. That's not a criticism of you, Erica. It's a reflection of the reality that we all inhabit. It's 11:02.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 6 minutes after 11, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we turn our attention next to the story that we should have done sooner, but it's been bubbling away in the background now for weeks. It's an extraordinary example of what I suppose you'd have to call the reverse Midas touch. King Midas, of course, the ancient monarch who was granted wishes, Greek, I think, granted wishes and chose that everything he touches turns to gold. It's a fascinating story. I would recommend my friend Alex Andreou's podcast series, Podyssey. You see what he did there? Looking at Greek myths and their relevance to the modern world. The King Midas one is, well, they're all brilliant, but I really do recommend that you listen to the King Midas one, because quite a lot of mythology is misrepresented, as in the stories we think we know are not the stories that the ancients told. One example of that would be, what's his chops, wouldn't it? King Canute. How many people still think King Canute turned up on the beach that day because he was so up himself he thought he'd be able to turn the tide back? What he was trying to do was demonstrate to his barons, his court, his nobles, that he didn't have superpowers, that he wasn't omnipotent, that he could go stop to the tide and nothing would happen at all. I think about King Canute quite often. Do you know who else I think about quite often? Especially when Donald Trump's in the White House and you watch people bending the knee in ways that are, frankly, puke-worthy. Henry VIII. I think about Henry VIII quite a lot. A sort of syphilitic psychopath who got away with doing whatever the hell he wanted, including dismantling the Catholic Church. Whether or not he was wanging on about Judeo-Christian values while he dismantled the Catholic Church, I do not know. But, you can understand why people went along with Henry VIII, because if they didn't, they'd get their head chopped off. That's not a fate that would await anybody who stood up to Donald Trump in the British or the American media or political establishment, and yet bend the knee they do. I wish, and also when we were kids, we got taught that Henry VIII was like some sort of hero, like a sort of cross between Richard the Lionheart and, go on, think of someone clever to insert into this bit of my commentary. Richard the Lionheart and, I don't know. I nearly said Lester Piggott then, because he was really good at riding horses. But anyway, you know what I mean. We get taught that Henry VIII was a don. And in fact, he was, by any stretch of the imagination, he was. I wonder if that's the first example of those weird right-wingers saying, people are ashamed of our country. You shouldn't be able to describe Henry VIII as a syphilitic psychopath who murdered his own wives. But because he was, and that somehow would stain the flag that I've just hung from a lamppost. I don't know. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the reverse Midas touch that Keir Starmer currently possesses, because there's two things about this that are funny. The first is that net support for digital ID cards at the beginning of the summer stood at about 35% of the population. So there was, 35% is enough to get you elected. I don't know what opposition was. It would have been 53% in June said they were in favour of digital ID cards. It fell from 35%. So in June, 53% of voters said they were in favour of digital ID cards and 19% were opposed. Let's just get those numbers in mind, right? 53% of voters said they were in favour of digital ID cards last June. 19% said they were opposed. Fast forward a few weeks to Keir Starmer announcing the rollout of a national ID scheme, in the immediate aftermath of which 31% of people said they were in favour of it and 45% said they were opposed. So, literally, by dint of announcing something that was previously quite popular, Keir Starmer appears to have single-handedly and personally made it spectacularly unpopular. recommending journalism today, so I'll carry on. There's a wonderful piece in The New World, which is a wonderful organ. It used to be known as The New European, but it has expanded its remit somewhat, by the brilliant James Ball, which really just goes into forensic detail about how the ID cards disaster is another sign, to steal the headline for a moment, that Starmer has lost it. Looking at the winter fuel allowance and other things, digital ID probably gets chalked up. I mean, how has that happened? How has that happened? How does one man get to turn a policy that's popular into a policy that's unpopular by dint of actually introducing the policy? I do not know. You can riddle me that if you want on 0345 6060 973. Because, and the other bit that's funny is that if you were terminally online, like some, I think you have to be right-wing now, don't you, to be terminally online? Because if you lean ever so slightly towards compassion and decency, then you're going to find it unbearable since Elon Musk took over Twitter. I don't know. Maybe some people are still there fighting the good fight. But I have to say, dipping my toe, as I am obliged to do, into the worlds of the terminally online, the obsessions of the terminally online, if you had to come up with something guaranteed to unite all the wombats and fruitcakes, all the sort of vaccine deniers, all the COVID weirdos, the people who thought that your phone was giving you the virus, all of the New World Order, World Economic Forum, Great Replacement Theory, COVID, if you had to unite all the crackpots, fruitcakes and wazzocks, it would be hard to think of a better idea than a digital ID card. I always remember Farage complaining about Oyster cards years ago. And I don't want anybody knowing where I'm going. And you sort of thought, who is going to be sitting in an office somewhere reporting on the fact that Nigel Farage has just travelled from Leicester Square to Hainault? It's while complaining all the while of people speaking foreign in the neighbouring carriage. I mean, so if you wanted to unite all of those people, then a digital ID card in the current climate would actually be epic trolling, as the kids almost certainly don't say. But that doesn't account for this scale of opposition. So I'm doing that thing that I should probably do slightly more often. It could be, you're right, it could be footballification. It could just be Starmer's done it and I'm on the other team, so I now hate it. I liked it before, but then Starmer did it and now I don't. But there's obviously something else going on here. The fact that popularity plummeted is not just going to be down to the crackpots, fruitcakes and loonies. Is it? I don't think it is. And I think I need to slightly review. Well, do I? I don't know. I think I might need to review my conviction that most opposition to this scheme is confined to crackpots, fruitcakes and loonies. What are the real reasons? What are the non-crazy reasons for resisting? I suppose, in a way, I'm asking you why you changed your mind, because there must be a huge number of people listening to this programme who are part of the statistics we're describing. You thought it was a good idea in June and you think it's a really bad idea now. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. So there's two questions. There's the personal and there's the political. The political might be a bit easier to answer. So how on earth did Keir Starmer manage to turn a popular idea into an unpopular idea by promising to bring it in? Just think about those words. It's absolutely nuts what I'm describing. How did Keir Starmer, all answers welcome, it's Friday, so you can be a bit silly if you want. How did Keir Starmer manage to turn a popular idea into an unpopular idea by promising to bring it in? 0345 6060 973. And are the opponents of it mostly crackpots, loonies and fruitcakes? Or are there... They can't be, because the Liberal Democrats are opposed to it. Ed Davey doesn't like it. There's lots of... But I don't know what the sensible reasons are. My friend Scott closed down the most obvious line of argument for me last time we were talking about it, because I used to be a great upholder of the idea that, oh no, we can't bring that in, because if we end up with some fascists in charge, they'll be able to use it in a really, really bad way. To which Scott responded by pointing out that if the fascists are in charge, mate, they can do whatever they want. They can bring it in by tea time. They don't need to sit there hoping that they'll inherit an ID card scheme from Keir Starmer so that they can start rounding up all the Capricorns and Irish radio presenters They will just be able to do it anyway because they are fascists. So I don't really buy the idea that we should be opposed to it in case future governments use it unpleasantly. The current government won't be using it unpleasantly, but future governments might. Maybe your objection is that the current government will be using it unpleasantly. But the cold, hard statistical fact is that digital ID cards for everybody, including 13-year-olds, according to one report today, which, again, I don't really worry about. The Daily Mail use words like sinister, and I use words like why? Why should I be worried about this? Why would you be worried about it? 0345 6060973. And how on earth did Keir Starmer... This is actually hilarious, right? Unless you're suffering from chronic footballification, in which case it's been a really tricky week for you, hasn't it? Because you have to give Donald Trump some credit for... quite a lot of credit, in fact, for what has happened in the Middle East. And you have to laugh at Keir Starmer's uncanny ability to turn political gold into base metal. He's turned it into purist green. It was really, really popular in June. Sounds like that Prince song, doesn't it? Sign of the Times. So it's really, really popular in June. And by September, it was massively unpopular. And all that changed in the interim was that Keir Starmer said he was going to do it. Riddle me that. On 0345 6060973. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. It's 11:17.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:18, and it's one of those rare mornings where I use words like fruitcakes, crackpots and loonies, and probably reach 12 noon today regretting it and thinking I shouldn't have been so rude. But most of the arguments I've heard about ID cards or digital ID cards have been a bit daft. And yet they are apparently powerful enough, or Keir Starmer's personal toxicity is such that a popular policy can be rendered unpopular by simply having this particular Prime Minister promise to introduce it. So what has happened, either on the political level or for you on the personal? I wonder how I pronounce this name. I usually get phonetic guidance on the screen. I'm going to go for Mach.
Hi, it's Mache from Derby.
Mache. I can do Derby, mate. I was born there, but I needed a little bit of help with Mache. What's on your mind, Mache? What would you like to say?
Hi. So, I'm calling because I really like the analogy with the anti-Midas patch that Keir Starmer...
It's not me. I didn't come up with that. I think lots of people did, long before I piled in.
I think it's spot on, though. I think it's spot on. And I'm just calling because I was thinking about the electronic IDs that Keir Starmer wants to introduce. And because in Poland, I come from Poland, I've been in this country for 12 years, and we do have national ID, and I'm not really against it.
Yeah.
But in the sense that Keir Starmer wants to introduce it, I see why people are against it, because we have a lot of tools in place at the moment that we can use to check people's right to work in this country. And I just think this is another way that it's really easy for reform supporters to prove that they just want to spend money for nothing. And I just, I am not particularly against it per se, but in this particular instance, because of the way it's being introduced, I am against it.
Because you didn't have strong views about it, but you'd have been at least ambivalent because your experiences in Poland have been largely positive, but because he introduced it as a sort of anti-illegal immigration, he would say, but quite often when people are explaining their opposition to illegal immigration, the word illegal becomes increasingly redundant. It doesn't technically in this case. The facts don't support that. I'm talking about the rhetoric, because he's kind of framed it as a weapon with which to hit illegal immigrants. That then it becomes something different from what it was back in June. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And at this point, I see that a lot of people are being obsessed as freaks, as you call them,
yes,
with this idea of the government controlling everybody. But at the same time, I just think that I agree that whatever Keir Starmer would now propose, that the freaks of people that are permanently online would oppose it, no matter what it would be. If he offered everybody 500 quid a month, I think Reform voters would say, no, we don't want it because it's coming from Keir Starmer.
I think you might be right. Yeah, but I mean, the petition hit at the end of last month, it hit 2.4 million, which is quite a lot. I was quite rude to a caller on the day it was introduced by pointing out that you can get 100,000 signatures on a petition to, rename the moon John by tea time tomorrow if you want. I'm not a massive fan of petitions, but they're a numbers game, aren't they? And the opposition to it is huge. So I don't know that we can break it down, Maciej. How much of it is simple antipathy towards Keir Starmer in percentage terms? How much of it is fear of state overreach, if you like, or they're having too much information? How much of it is the sort of fruitcake, loony and crackpot constituency who think that they're going to use it to control our brains or infect us all with some new virus? Do you see what I mean? It's an extraordinary coalition and almost impossible to break it down. I agree, but
also I think you have to ask the question, why is it being pushed so much? So I'm not a citizen of this country yet. I would like to apply, and I'm not particularly supporting reform. But I have seen this petition online on X, on Facebook, and I'm not interested in that. I didn't want to sign it, and I've seen this being shared, going
getting
viral.
Pushed in front of you. It's all about the algorithms, isn't it? And
so how many people signed it because it's anti-Labour government rather than actually understanding what they're signing? Yeah,
sign here if you hate Keir Starmer, and then all sorts of people from the left and the right would be piling it. Well, wonderful start. Thank you, Maciej. So substantive opposition to it, and also emotional opposition to it. So the kind of people who obsess about the government having too much control over our lives and too much say in our lives are often the people who want the government to have loads more control over other people's lives, up to and including deporting people who've got a right to be here. It's a really weird dichotomy, isn't it? It's like the essence of that thing we discovered in the aftermath of the Brexit vote, the I don't mean you brigade. Oh, I voted Brexit to get rid of all the immigrants. Well, your daughter-in-law's an immigrant. Oh, I don't mean you. I voted Brexit to get rid of all the immigrants. Your daughter's an immigrant. Oh, I don't mean you. I voted for Brexit to get rid of all the foreigners. I said, well, you're married to a foreigner. Oh, I don't mean him. Actually, I do. But you've got that on a epic scale here, because the people who are always wanging on about government control and coming up with ludicrous conspiracy theories actually want the government to have the power to round people up and chuck out the ones they don't like. So, how has Keir Starmer managed to turn political gold into political, this is only really going to work with Blackadder fans, into a policy of purest green? And what made you change your mind? I like Maciej's answer, but that won't be the answer that everybody has. Luke's in Bournemouth. Luke, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello.
I think that it's the wording of it being mandatory is what stopped it being popular. I think inherently people just don't like being told what to do. So I think if it came across as a voluntary system, I think sort of anyone under the age of 30 who has all their bank cards on their phone then gets ID'd every so often would go, well, I don't keep my wallet on me anymore because everything's on my phone. An ID on there would be really handy. And then anyone that's had to deal with, sort of solicitors or renting a house or whatever, and they've had to get witnesses to see their signature and stuff like that, they'd all go, well, if I had a digital ID, I could just send a link over. That would be much more convenient as well. So I think in the summer when it was popular, everyone was thinking of those systems. But then when it came out as you have to have this, everyone sort of went, well, why? What are you up to? It makes you more suspicious. I think by enforcing it rather than making it a voluntary system, it instantly makes people second-guess your motives.
But wouldn't it be pointless if it wasn't mandatory?
Well, no, not really, because I think it would evolve that everyone would then, get one. So I think, I'm not saying everyone's got one, but having a smartphone isn't mandatory, but most people have them now because it's just more convenient. Other people have certain apps that you communicate on. So, my nan had a smartphone because she chatted to her grandchildren on WhatsApp. No one's forcing her to, but because it was much more convenient, she went and got a smartphone. I think it would be like that. No one would force you to have it. But a few years down the line, everyone would just go, "Oh yeah, it is way better just to have it digital. I'll just get that."
Do you want one? Do you care that it's mandatory?
Not really. I don't know. I'd have one just because it would make my life more convenient. But I can see that saying you've got to have one, like, does.
But I think I don't.
Well,
this is where I don't want driving licenses are mandatory if you want to drive.
Yeah, but you don't have to carry it on you while you drive, so you don't have to have it. Like, you've got to have one, but you don't have to have it on you.
So the fact that it's on your phone is the problem?
No, I don't. I think
you're speculating on other people's objections rather than describing your own. That's not super helpful. That's not a criticism because we're trying to work it out. I don't know. I mean, the idea of it being voluntary seems to me to render it pointless. But I have to tell you, Andrew thinks you're 100% correct. That's not going to explain... Do you think that... how much of the plummeting in popularity do you think that explains?
I think quite a lot. I think then the secondary reason of them saying it will stop illegal working, I think because you're meant to have a national insurance number to work now and people still work illegally.
That's my problem, is that it doesn't... I don't understand how it's supposed to do the thing that they say they're introducing it to do.
Exactly. So then when the people who are, like, a little bit against it hear that, they think, well, that's clearly a lie. So the government must be up to something else. Whereas if it was just a voluntary thing, more people would just get it and you'd see how it worked out. And then eventually the rollout would just be 99%.
And that's when it kicks in with the crackpots?
Yeah. That's when they join in.
And I suppose we need to look at what some of the crack pottery looks like as well, don't we? Thank you for that, Luke. 0345 60 60973 is the number that you need. The anti-Midas touch, or the reverse Midas touch element of it, is possibly the most amusing. But, of course, some of the reasons that people will have for having reversed their popularity will be completely sensible, like the fact that it's mandatory. What about the fears that people have of what might be done with the information? I suppose I have to own my ignorance on this. I don't worry about people getting hold of my information because I don't know what it is that they're going to do with it. That story about the children's nurseries was horrible, but again, I don't know what is the worst case scenario in these situations. If they take all your money out of your bank account, the bank gives it back to you. I know that sounds naive, and I know there must be more to it than I'm allowing, but that's the point, isn't it? I want you to tell me what it is that I should be worried about. 11:30 is the time. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
2 minutes after 11 is the time. We will be wading back into the digital ID debacle, I'm afraid you have to call it, when you look at the effect that announcing the policy has had upon the policy's popularity shortly. But I want to take a moment now just to talk you through some of the elements of Global's Make Some Noise Day. And before I do the sort of official bit, I just want to tell you something personal. It's an extraordinary charity. I mean, it's entirely organic. It was started in this building by my colleagues. And it is designed to do something that hadn't occurred to me needed to be done. What it does is it scoops up all the little charities who can't afford to send people with clipboards out onto the streets to try to sign you up to a regular donation. It scoops up the charities that are run by people who are too busy to fundraise because they're already burning the candle at both ends to keep their services alive. I have met some genuinely extraordinary people. I've been to daycare facilities where children who wouldn't be able to stay in any other daycare facilities are looked after. Children with behavioural issues or special educational needs, not necessarily profound physical disabilities, but just children with the kind of conditions that some people pretend not to understand and just write off as naughty, but which are complicated psychological issues, and they need really careful care. I've met some profoundly disabled children whose parents I honestly don't know how they keep going. And one of the ways in which they keep going is by calling upon the services of some of the charities that we support, the little charities. And that's why, I despite being sort of professionally quite grumpy and quite cynical, I've never been prouder in my whole career of anything, as much as A, my involvement in this charity, and B, the amount of money that we personally raise by doing our live show every year, and C, the impact. I even get to drop off the checks. You know, like footballers back in the day when they'd sign a football, I get to drop off big comedy checks. And sometimes people know they're getting some money, but they're getting twice what they think they were getting, and it makes my heart sing. It's a magical thing, and none of it happens without you. And that is, it sounds glib, it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but my God, it just is true, you know? Whether I'm trying to get some very, very rich person at a fancy do to donate a 5-figure sum, or whether I'm encouraging you to donate what you can afford on a day like today, none of it happens without you. The official bit goes like this, and it matters. I want you to listen to this as well, because right now across the country there are many, many people going through unimaginably difficult times, and Make Some Noise is here to support those people facing life's toughest challenges. I'm going to introduce you now to someone who has benefited from your donations, but it's not really her own benefit that prompted us to invite her onto a special edition of Full Disclosure this week. It's the work her charity does looking after other people. It's lifeline support for amputees and those with congenital limb absence of all ages and their families, the support that they get, emotional support, physical support, social support, to help reduce isolation and promote economic and physical independence. You know, a different charity, not this one, not Finding Your Feet, which is based in Scotland, but it was a different charity a few years ago that we were helping out. And I met a young lad who was born with one arm, and the charity provided respite care. That might not be a phrase you're familiar with, or you might just think it applies to cancer. In fact, I've probably used it slightly incorrectly, because what they did was fund weekends away. They'd fund holidays for the entire family. So his sister, who didn't have congenital limb absence, would get to go on this trip as well. And I remember asking what was so special about it, because, you know, you can go on a trip, you can go to Centre Parks with your family, you don't have to just be in the exclusive company of families who are dealing with a similar disability. And he said the most powerful and beautiful thing. He just said to me, none of us have to explain. It's like the only weekend of the year where his sister doesn't get asked why her brother's only got one arm. It's the only weekend of the year where mum doesn't have to deal with concerned and caring inquiries from other parents. It's the only weekend of the year where he's not the only kid on the climbing frame with one arm, or the only kid in the room with one arm. Just such a powerful moment of clarity on why these charities are so important, but they're also tiny. Finding Your Feet is growing, and it needs your support. We are funding an activities program. Global's Make Some Noise is funding an activities program for Finding Your Feet over 2 years to reduce social isolation and improve physical fitness. It was set up by Hutton in 2014. She is one of the most amazing and inspirational people you could ever hope to meet, and her mission in life now is to enhance the lives of fellow Scottish amputees.
The doctor that first morning, you know, it's 7:30 in the morning or something, and there's about 12 people standing around your bed, all trying to learn about you, the nurses, the physios, the OTs, you know, even the registrars, and then there's all the consultants and also, yeah, about 12 people there, and the main guy says, Corina's to lose her hands and her feet in 3 days' time, and they start discussing how and why. And
that was the first you'd heard? Yeah.
At that point, I thought they were going to try and test and scan and whatever to try and save them.
Sure.
We thought that's why we were being moved to find some miracle.
But in fact, the decision had already been taken.
Yeah. And I guess that's when you find out that you're not superhuman at all.
Well,
you're just human. That was a low point, I think.
But also, you have subsequently done fairly superhuman things. I don't want to get ahead, but that contrast is almost unbearable, Corina, because you've gone from being surrounded by people who were essentially telling you could fly one day if you just put the effort in. You're so incredible. You've made this, you've made that. and it feels like a guillotine. It feels like a moment of absolute horrific reversal when you're learning almost secondhand that the opposite is true.
I think possibly that. I mean, they didn't build me up to what I could do. They just thought what I had done.
No, but it
was
creates
great.
an image inside of you, doesn't it? That I can do anything.
Absolutely. But the thing for me is I found it very hard to imagine life without hands and feet. I had no idea what that meant. I managed to hold it together till they left the room, and then obviously crumbled. And the big thing is you've got no family or anything there at that time. Nobody knows this message is coming. So very quickly the family, I've got a very good support network around me. I'm so lucky. But they come in and tell me, don't think like that. And interestingly, that nurse that I met...
like what? What do you mean?
Don't think negatively, don't think what you can't do.
Okay. Even on day one, when you've got no precedent, no guide, no notion of what life without hands and feet could be like, people are already building you up again, helping you.
Well, yes, I think so. It's a survival thing, isn't it? It's like, because it did cross my mind, was it worth the fight? Was it worth the effort? Was it worth all the worry? Was it, and what can life be like without hands and feet? And I had no idea. And there didn't seem to be anybody who could tell me. The staff, brilliant. NHS, amazing. But they've never been in that situation and they don't know.
Incredible woman, incredible charity, incredible cause, and an incredible opportunity for you to help support it. To donate £40, £30, £20 or £10, all you have to do is text LBC40, LBC30, LBC20 or LBC10, no spaces, LBC40, LBC30 to 70766. It all goes to LBC's Make Some Noise, 100% of your donation, 16 and over only. Please seek the bill payer's permission, and of course standard network charges may apply. Terms and conditions are at makesomenoise.com. So just text LBC40, LBC30, LBC20 or LBC10 without any spaces to 70766, and we can get on with the incredibly uplifting and inspiring business of channeling your money to the causes who will be using it to change lives, change young people's lives every day in every corner of the country. Thank you in advance if you are minded to do that. It's 11:40 is the time. I've got a funny update for you. Did you hear yesterday's little clip of Donald Trump not knowing what habeas corpus was? A poor Hungarian peasant girl, he almost said. Well, I'd forgotten that the person he then passed the question on to, like a kind of hospital pass on a rugby field, has a bit of form in this field as well. We'll have a little look at that shortly, but I want to get another call on the digital ID card question. Dave is in Manchester. Dave, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How are you?
Very well, mate. What's on your mind?
Good. So I work in privacy. I work as a data protection officer, and I've been in this field for a long time, and it's something that it's really close to me.
Yeah.
And I think to answer your question, why has it become so deeply unpopular? And I think one of the reasons is because it's easy to just... Oh, and by the way, I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
That's what they all say. That's what they all say, Dave.
I know. I tend. I'm a big believer in believing what scientists and science tells us, and being vaccinated and all of that sort of stuff. Also, I like Keir Starmer. I voted Greens, but I'm happy Labour are in. So okay. And I like Keir overall. But I think that the reason it's so unpopular is because it's easy to just relegate this and say it's for the conspiracy theorists. And the thing is, they jump on all these crazy ideas. But the thing is with this one is that there is something that we should be concerned about here. And there's a massive intellectual part of the community that have been worried about this for years. And if you think about the advent of Bitcoin and Satoshi and the cyberpunks back in the 80s, and that they were worried about privacy and being tied to financial freedom.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there was a massive group of intellectuals called the cypherpunks, and they were made up of Intel physicists, mathematicians, professors, and they were deeply concerned about the advent of digital IDs being tied to our currency. But the reason there's a concern here, and there's a few things I want to touch on. First of all, we give up a lot of our privacy to our smartphones. Okay, they compromise our privacy. But there's a couple of things here. First of all, that privacy that we compromise, it's fragmented. So Google knows what I Google, and my bank knows what I spend my money on, and Facebook knows what I look at. But there's not a centralised entity that oversees everything that I do.
No, but this wouldn't do that.
Well, it would, because these IDs will tie you legally, biometrically, to who. Yeah,
it's the only time I'd ever have to get it out is if I was applying for a new job.
Well, this is what you think, Mike. This is where
you said you weren't a conspiracy theorist.
I'm not.
Okay, I'll say it again. The only time I'd ever need it. So I think the earlier caller was wrong when he said you have to have it with you all the time. There was Warren puts it like this: there's an easy explanation about why the popularity fell following the announcement. Disinformation. It was immediately shared, even by many usually sensible people. There will be no requirement to have the digital ID on you at any point. The only mandatory element is to use it is within a right to work check.
Yes, but here's the thing. James. Right. So this is.
Don't do slippery slope, Dave. Don't do slippery slope.
I understand that it's a slippery slope. I honestly get that. But the truth is, there's something called central bank digital currencies, and these have been in development for years. You can Google this, and the UK is one of the countries.
But it's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do. You've gone full conspiracy theory.
I'm not.
You have.
Check this out. This is.
No. When people say you can Google this and check this out, I'm asking about a thing I have to show to an employer to prove I have a right to be in this country. It's got nothing to do with digital Watsy-Marky cyberfunks.
No, there are a couple of things here. Digital...
Last chance, Dave. Yellow card. I show it when I apply for a new job. It's got nothing to do with digital cyber currencies.
Okay, so let's ignore that, okay? So, let's say that isn't coming.
No, but that's a conspiracy theory.
But the thing is, it's not...
Don't make me a Nas. Don't make me be a meanie. Okay. Don't make me be a meanie, Dave. What is the problem with a digital ID that I have to produce?
You can't
answer the question until I've finished asking it.
I am.
No, you can't. No.
Fragmented.
No. Here is a thing. I have to, like my national insurance number, but digitised. What's the problem?
Because, right, you can't step out of the system, right?
I can't step out of the national insurance system.
Yeah, but for now, it's just...
So then we said no slippery slope. No slippery slope. No, it is. You've gone there. You've done it. I'm getting messages calling me a shill now. So you've got no objection to what has been announced.
Okay, so here's another slippery slope.
No, I don't want to hear any more slippery slope. Have you got final question?
Why do we need this, right? You've got to ask the question. We already have checks and balances in to stop illegal immigrants get work.
Well, they're not working.
But why do we need this?
Because they're not working. So you could say this one won't work either, to which the response would be, well, we could at least try it. So I think I know the answer to this, and I think, sadly, you do too. Do you have any objections whatsoever to the detail of what has actually been announced, or are all of your fears based on things that have not been announced?
My fears are based on things that have not been announced. Yeah,
okay, well, that's a conspiracy theory. It's 11:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:49. James, you're supposed to be a journalist. Can you listen to what the public are saying? Look at the government's past record. If you class everything as a conspiracy, we'd never be able to analyse anything properly. Yada, 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 yada. Listen, you can explain your objections to things that haven't been announced, if you want, but go and explain it to your pillow. I'm looking for objections to what has been announced, which is very, very simply an authentication card to prove that you are entitled to work in this country. That's all it is. If it was on a piece of paper, people are saying it would be absolutely fine. But if it's on my phone, it doesn't even have to be on your phone. You only need to produce it when you're applying for a new job. There was a wonderful little thing on Blue Sky by one of my favourite people that I follow on there, who's... he's a bit of a polymath, actually, musician, comedian. He's called Joel Morris. And this is my answer to you, Peter, when you suggest that we should listen more to the public. He writes, they should just stop polling and stick with the big one we had in 2016 that revealed roughly half of us will believe any old toot. And you know, the idea that because lots of people believe something that's not true, you should pay more attention to it. If the opposite is true. My job is to ignore what people think if it's based on misinformation and find out what the real information is. So, what am I supposed to object to? And the question I really wanted you to answer was not, yeah, but they might bring in this other thing that they're not bringing in, but if they did, it would be terrible. I've done my own research. You should Google it, cyber something, something, something currency. I want to know why Keir Starmer has managed to make something so popular, so unpopular, so quickly. It could be that is the answer to the question. Did the misinformation and the the mad conspiracy theories explode after he announced it? So anybody who's online has been exposed to the kind of toot that we're now being exposed to. I honestly don't know. And the other problem I've got is my excessive modesty. Is I honestly think, I'm trying to work out why I don't feel all the things that you're telling me I should feel. Not you, but some people. And I just don't think I'm important enough. This might be incredibly naive. It might be dangerously naive. But the idea that by carrying a digital ID, they're going to be able to do things to me that I don't want them to do just seems to me to be a little bit ridiculous. You know? And I say that knowing what Donald Trump is doing to critics in the United States of America, but his ability to do it hasn't been increased or decreased by dint of digital IDs. I don't even know whether they have them or not. And guess what? Nor do you. I just don't think I'm important. I wonder whether there's a link between subscribing to conspiracy theories and having slightly exaggerated ideas of your own importance in the great scheme of things. Like Farage, objecting to having an Oyster card because, quotes, they, end quotes, might know where he was going. I've got two thoughts on that. Well, where are you going that you don't want people to know? What are you up to? And the second one is, well, we've got automatic number plate recognition in this country. So if you're going to go somewhere by car, they can find you in a heartbeat, in a nanosecond. I just don't know what it is that people have been so spooked by. Bee's in Bedford. Bee, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Lovely to speak to you again.
Hello, Bee.
So I'm going to give you my silly answer first. My silly answer is actually Brexit, because before Brexit, an ID card would have been jolly handy, because I could have then travelled around without my passport. We can't do that anymore. They took that away from us. But my more serious answer is I think it's because it's a Labour government. So if you're about the same age as me, so if you cast your mind back, it was proposed in the previous Labour government, never got very far. Prior to
David
that,
Blunkett, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. And prior to that, there was talk about having a voluntary ID card, because if you were sort of a younger person, you had to find all sorts of funny ways of proving how old you were. And they talked about having a national ID card. And obviously it wasn't digital back then because we didn't have digital services. But I think it was a voluntary thing back then. But I think this idea of compulsion is the problem. I think we're hardwired.
This is where I get left behind a bit.
Well, think about COVID, right? Think about COVID. Yeah. If we had instigated a mandatory vaccination programme, you'd have had all kinds of kick up for it.
Yeah, but if some butts were pots and pans, there'd be no need of tinkers. Apologies to anybody who finds that phraseology offensive.
But that's the thing, though. If you when you're saying to people, well, if you have this, you can then go to Australia to see the grandkids. They're like, stick it all in my arm. I'm happy with that. But as soon as you say it's mandatory, people then get this weird idea that somehow you're taking something away. I know exactly.
Everything's
mandatory. I'm not. Yeah, I actually disagree with this completely. There's so many things in this world that are
either I've got
mandatory.
people speculating on why others are opposed to it, or I've got conspiracy theorists. There doesn't seem to be anything in between.
I mean, I don't actually
Where's
oppose
Ed Davey
it
when
per
you need
se.
him? Where's Ed Davey when you... Where's the sensible... Ian Dunt has written a brilliant piece about why I shouldn't like it, but I usually change my mind completely according to anything Ian Dunt writes, but I got to the end of that piece. I thought, God, that's a brilliant piece. He's good. Wish I could write like that. But I didn't change my mind about anything.
No, I think the problem with the idea of the digital ID card is because we don't know enough about it. Fundamentally, there's enough space for all of these conspiracies to come in, and even someone like me who's quite happy with it, I would be quite easily going, oh, is that something I need to be worried about now? It's because we don't know enough.
That's the funny bit, though, isn't it? In the current climate, particularly online and indeed post-COVID, if you had to come up with something most guaranteed to inflame the fruitcakes, loonies and crackpots, then telling them we're introducing a mandatory digital ID card. They should have, do you know what they should have done? They should have stuck the letters WEF on it somewhere, just to absolutely boil the brains of the sort of half-wits and weirdos who are committed to these kind of conspiracies. But there's nothing here that I have to be frightened of. Nothing at all.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that most people have to be frightened of other than not knowing what it is. That's all. So what we need is more information.
It's a thing. It's a number that digitise. I mean, numbers are digitised already, aren't they? I suppose technically they're digits after all. But I just here is B interviewing me for a job, and at the end of it, probably even before we've started, she offers it me because I'm a brilliant candidate and says, can I just see your digital ID? And I go, yeah, here it is. And she goes, fine, that's absolutely cool, can't be faked, absolutely wonderful. And somehow this has been allowed to evolve.
The flip side of that, the trouble is, the flip side is, when I go for an interview, I already produce my passport, my
these are valid objections, that it doesn't necessarily seem set to do the things that it's designed to do.
I suppose. From my point of view, it just feels a little redundant. And also, if I go back to my earlier point, especially in line of Brexit, because that would have been something useful, that I don't have to take my passport, I can have my digital ID everywhere I go, and then I can move around with freedom. I can't do that now, so it feels a bit redundant.
Yeah, I hear you. That's an interesting point. You get the Irish passport, you can get it in credit card form, so that's already a sort. Sorry, I know, I'm just boasting now. Sam's in Leeds. Last word on this, Sam. Are you here to speculate upon the opinions of people that are not actually you, or are you a conspiracy theorist, or are you the mythical Holy Grail caller who has sensible objections to the detail that has actually been announced?
Well, James, I am concerned about the cost implications of it and the cost-benefit analysis of it, whether or not it's actually worth spending money on something that's not going to really make much of a difference.
That's a good old-fashioned pre-internet objection. We can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, we can see the public services falling apart around us.
We can.
And we're coming up spending money on something that's, I don't really think is going to make that much of a difference to our lives.
You're the winner.
Is it worth it?
You're the winner. There you go. That's a perfect... But that doesn't explain why it's gone from popular to unpopular in the blink of an eye, does it?
Well, no. And I do think that Starmer's doing it maybe for a little bit of political reasons. He's trying to get some sort of edge around immigration to do with it,
That's true. That's true. I agree with you on that. But as B just reminded... Go on, sorry.
Is it worth the finance? And everything quadruples in this country. So the budget, they say, it's going to cost this.
Except their wages.
Yeah. But in the end, we can all see the newspaper article now. The cost of this is now gone up tenfold. And you think, well, yeah. And what's it actually done? Nothing.
Do you want to know something? I've got some good news and some bad news.
Yeah.
Which do you want first?
Start with the good.
That is a really sensible, thoughtful and plausible contribution to the programme.
Thanks. Thoughts are bad.
Yeah. It's rubbish phoning. I want more crackpots. Yeah, I mean, it's just sensible, calm, down-to-earth, informed, plausible, feasible and intelligent.
I'll drag out my tinfoil now and then I'll ring you back.
No, I'm joking. Well, I'm not joking, actually, but that perhaps is the reason, is that it appeals to a certain type of personality. Sam's objections will not. That's just sort of me sitting here, stroking my chin, going, that's a good point. It's not me sitting here going, they're coming to get me! And the digital ID card is like a big net. It's going to be like the child catcher in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And Keir Starmer, that is going to make a lot more noise on social media, isn't it? It's going to get a lot more clicks and giggles. And that, of course, is the world that we live in. It is all about drawing attention to yourself on social media. And if you're not going to do that by saying, well, this is it's a bit rich for my blood, looks a bit dear. No one's going to click on Sam. They're going to click on the bloke saying, and the next thing they'll come for is your feet. Or the next thing they'll come for is your children. If you tolerate this, they'll say, your children will be next.
James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 12 is the time. Allow me to encourage you once again, particularly if you're just joining us, to make a donation to LBC's Make Some Noise. It's our official charity, and it's not just one of those geezers on the radio hitting some numbers or hitting some lines. Many of us are quite passionately involved in it, very passionately supportive of it. I'll be doing a live interview, a live episode of Full Disclosure on stage in London in February that is exclusive. I mean, I don't get paid. All the money raised 100% goes to the charity. Did it with Carol Vorderman last year. We've done it with Keir Starmer in the past. Did it with the most wonderful woman that I think I've ever had ring into the show. Don't get jealous. She was really special. Lily Pohlman, who I've been thinking about an awful lot lately, a Holocaust survivor who dedicated her life to trying to build bridges between communities that would otherwise be at each other's throats, and that's why I do it, because the charity is so incredible. It also it directs all its attention at children, and you might not know this, right? But you know someone who is going through hell, possibly with their child's health, possibly with their child's mental health. It is such a lonely path that people go down. And the country we live in, I think all countries, I don't think it's unique to this one, still attaches stigma and difficulty to invisible conditions. Whether it is a particularly profound neurodiversity, whether it is a behavioural issue or disorder, whatever it may be. I mean, it's bad enough having to turn the radio on and hear people describing it as just being naughty, for example, and I'm afraid I used to be one of those people, but I know a hell of a lot more about it now, thanks largely to you, than I did then. And I know that the chances of someone you know, or certainly someone in your child's class, or someone you know going through, someone's away from school a lot, they'll be going through things that you don't know about. And the only people that can help them sometimes, and I know it's a space the state should be filling, but it isn't. The waiting lists are off the chart. It's the little charities, the tiny little charities that provide a safety net when everything else has failed. And some of the stories we hear from the people whose lives... the sort of two things you hear, relief and gratitude. Relief that there was somewhere to turn to, and gratitude that you found it. And of course a lot don't, because as I keep telling you, these are charities that are run by people who are too busy running charities to run fundraising, which is where we come in. Doing all sorts of work with all sorts of charities, and none of it happens without you. And this is how you help. Are you ready? To donate £40, £30, £20 or £10, just text LBC40, LBC30, LBC20 or, wait for it, yep, you got it, LBC10, no spaces, just LBC40, LBC30, and send it to 70766. Not the usual number, but 70766. 100%. Your donation goes to Make Some Noise. 16 and over only. Please seek the bill payer's permission. Standard network charges may apply. You can find all the T's and C's at makesomenoise.com. So just again, because I really want you to do this, because the more of you that do, then the more children we can help. LBC 40, LBC 30, LBC 20 or LBC 10. And send it to 70766. Got quite a lot to get through this hour, but there's two funny things I want to do with you. I can't do them, though, until we've got the next phone-in up and running. And I saw a headline, and my first thought was, have we done this recently? Because I love this topic, and I think it's really important. But I do recognise that when I really love something and I think it's really important, I have a tendency perhaps to do it too often. But we haven't done this for ages. The headline read on Tuesday of this week, working class white boys shun reading. And it breaks my heart. A quarter of white working class boys do not spend any time reading outside school. Not a minute, nothing at all. It's their parents who are more likely to feel disillusioned with their child's school than other groups, and only a third think good grades at GCSE level are important for success. That's pretty grim, right? Farage is giving speeches in America at the moment about how awful schools are and how awful teachers are. And, I've said it before, I'll say it again, he knows exactly what he's doing, consigning people to a lifetime of ignorance and anger by demonising education. Extraordinary. But these are the results. I mean, it works. You've heard radio phone-in hosts do it. Every time a teacher goes on strike, any kid listening could be forgiven for thinking that teachers are their enemies rather than their friends. But reading Reading, that's what I want to focus on. We'll probably talk next week about some of the broader ramifications of the assault upon education itself. But reading, I don't know why they've focused on ethnicity, but it seems to be the flavour of the moment, doesn't it? I spoke to about 4,000 people, parents and children. 25% of white working class boys had never read a book, a comic or a magazine in any given week. The overall figure was 13%. Oh. And the two things in all of the years I've been doing this job that make me maddest when it comes to using middle class as a pejorative are food and reading. It's such a self-defeating position to adopt. Jamie was on Full Disclosure last week, and Jamie's working class credentials, not something he makes a lot of fuss and noise about. But you know, by the time his dad's pub was up and running, they were comfortably off. But he's not from a fancy pants background by any stretch of the imagination. But he loves food. He tells a story about having a couple of mates at school who were from the traveller community and who had not been exposed to particularly healthy food. And it was because he worked in the kitchen at the family pub in Essex probably before it was legal. I think they used to pay him in potatoes. But what he wanted to do was share some of his passion. He had a terrible, terrible time at school. He's spoken to you about his dyslexia. You know all about that. And yeah, he kept his head up throughout it because he had this astonishing relationship and gift for food and gift for cooking. And he tells a wonderful story about giving some smoked salmon to these lads from the traveller community, and you know, just a little bit of smoked salmon, top quality butter, best butter my mum would call it. Does anyone else's mum call it best butter? What's second best butter? Was it like margarine, or would you have two different grades of butter? My mum still says it. I was home a couple of weekends ago and I was making her a sandwich, and just as a joke, I said, "Do you want best butter on it, Mum?" And a really good butter, nice bread, and then some smoked salmon and a squeeze of lemon, and a little twist of black pepper. Now, smoked salmon's not cheap, but the transformation on the lads' faces, it's a lovely story. I've heard him tell it a couple of times, and that's how I feel about books. So I'm not about to say I'm not as good a cook as Jamie Oliver. Yeah, I don't take free kicks like David Beckham either. But that's how I feel about books. As the idea of going through life without books, I find it heartbreaking. And I'm not having a go at you if you just don't like them, if you've tried and just it doesn't work for you, you prefer other things. I'm talking about the kids who never get to taste it. Never get to taste smoke. They don't have a mate like Jamie Oliver who will just introduce them to something that they've not been introduced to before, and they would never get introduced to it either. And it's not going to be your mum and dad, because your mum and dad think that school's a waste of time and that GCSEs are for the birds. And I don't know how you do it, because I can't give you a taste of smoked salmon. I can't give these white working class lads a book. I don't know how you do it. But we have to try harder. And one way of doing it, I think, because I don't know that there'll be school-age children who've never read a book listening to this, but parents who don't think it's important might be. And I want to and the reason why I tie it in with food is because they both get labelled middle class. You can hear some of these parents whose children have never read a book describing it as middle class or posh or woke, probably. Books are probably woke now, are they, in some corners of our communities? Smoked salmon certainly is. But what is your story? So I don't contribute to this conversation. My parents were the opposite of this. Books were everywhere growing up. Well, rich, but there were books in the house, and we went to the library all the time. I realise now it was free childcare. Mum could go shopping, leave me in the library, and I'd still be there. I'd still be engaged when she got back, and safe, of course, and warm and dry. So I'm not in this phone-in. I've got nothing with this one. I want to know what it's like to discover reading, to discover books. later. So your class is not massively important to this, but if you are from a poorer background, you are more likely not to have had books. Just more likely. If you are white working class, today you are less likely to be reading than everybody else in the country. A white working class boy less likely to be reading than everybody else in the country. And for me, I mean, we're not going to have a debate about this. I'd include audiobooks. I'd also include comics and anything really that has the written word on it. But if you didn't get it in your childhood, how did you get it? What happened? And what difference did it make? That's it. That's the phone-in, all right? You didn't get books in your childhood. Reading wasn't a big thing for you in your childhood. Parents' fault? Teachers' fault? Whose fault? Anyone's fault. So you got there later in life. I want to know how you got there later in life, and I want to know what difference it made, all right? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. So you're one of these kids. You were one of these kids. You realise it now. Maybe you didn't realise it until I started wanging on. I didn't get it. I didn't realise that other children were going to the library all the time. Other people had books all the time. I can't remember not reading. I was reading, I think, before I even got to school. Early reader, not showing off. It's just true, just to highlight why I can't contribute much to this conversation except the questions. So you got it later in life. And you can tell me what difference it made to you, because I'm taking it for granted from day one. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need, okay? And that's the question. How did you get into reading if it didn't happen for you during childhood? And what happened when you did? It's 12:17.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I mean, look, on the other hand, you can rise to enormously important roles in the world despite never having read a book in your life. So, class is the crucial thing. If you're from a rich family and you've never read a book, you're going to end up, you're going to be okay. You're probably, you could even end up President of the United States of America without knowing what the. So I'm just going to do this, and then we'll talk to Danny, who's in Grimsby, because I just thought it was really funny. I played you this yesterday. And it shows Donald Trump not knowing what habeas corpus is. And not just not knowing what it is, but wondering, well, you listen to yourself.
Have you given any more thought to possibly suspending habeas corpus to not only deal with these insurrectionists across the nation, but also to continue rapidly deporting illegal aliens?
Yeah, is suspending who?
Habeas corpus, sir.
Oh. I don't know. I'd rather leave that to Christie. What do you think?
No, sir, I haven't been a part of any discussions on that.
Sorry, suspending who? It's like that Tony, what's his chops sketch about Magna Carta, isn't it? I love it. It's a poor Hungarian peasant girl. Anyway, that's Kirsty Noem, who is his Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem. So that's the person that he turns to for help with habeas corpus, who he seems to think is a person rather than a sort of legal principle. What I forgot yesterday was that she has form in this field. She was at a Senate hearing not long ago, a Homeland Security Committee hearing, where the Homeland Security Secretary was asked about one of the most fundamental principles of Western jurisprudence, and this happened.
The Trump administration is actively looking at suspending habeas corpus. Last week you were asked about this, and I want to clarify your position because it's obviously really important to get this right. So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to...
Let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason.
I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though,
it has never been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress.
Oh, boy. That's your Homeland Security Secretary, not even knowing what it was. But at least she knew it was a legal principle and not an actual person.
Have you given any more thought to possibly suspending habeas corpus to not only deal with these insurrectionists across the nation, but also to continue rapidly deporting illegal aliens?
Yeah, is suspending who?
Habeas corpus. So.
Oh, I don't know. I'd rather leave that to Christy. What do you think?
Habeas corpus, did she die in vain? Tony Hancock. I forgot his name a minute ago. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I haven't got time to explain. Read a book, guys. Danny's in Grimsby. Books, Danny, reading, and the differences they make. What can you tell me?
Hi, James. Just want to say, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Welcome.
Thank you. This quite literally changed my life. I was raised, in a classic working-class setup. My mum and dad on factories and supermarkets and that, and on the docks, and didn't have reading as an important thing. They didn't really have much interest in school growing up because of dyslexia and other sort of difficulties. So that I'm just going to try and fix up your phone line, because you've already sucked me into this story, and I want to make sure that I can hear all of it. I'll just go to Stuart in Blackpool, but we'll definitely be talking to Danny in Grimsby as well. Stuart, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. Can you hear me properly?
Loud and clear, mate.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. You don't know me, but you know my son. Actually, you read out a letter that he sent you a number of years ago on my birthday. A lad called Fenton.
Go on. I remember the name. Remind me why I read it out.
Because he sent you an email basically saying that I was a massive fan. I started listening to you around Brexit time, and I didn't actually get to read the letter myself, but you just were talking about how delightful he was. You don't normally do this kind of thing.
I don't actually. That's true. It proves it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely proven. So no, I want to thank you for that. First of all, that was amazing. It made my 40th birthday. It really did. It was brilliant. Secondly, so reading again, like the first caller mentioned, working class background, was never really pushed to accomplish anything as a child. My parents were proud of me no matter what I did, which was nothing. I grew up with no ambition, no real future. I just did sort of random jobs, not really getting anywhere. Until Brexit became a thing, and I needed to make a decision which could be quite life-changing. So I started doing research. I started listening to things on YouTube. I then saw James O'Brien on YouTube and started listening, researching. And then I started reading more and more, and then I started reading about politics, and then my partner, Zara, amazing person, bought me the first Game of Thrones book, and I thought, what am I going to do with this?
So you'd never read for pleasure in your life?
No, never. Not really. The odd book, but I never really got into it. So, I never really found my thing.
Sure.
And then I read it, and from that day I was hooked. I was just absolutely hooked. Started reading historical fiction.
It's amazing,
I just read.
Just one tickle is all it took.
That was it, yeah. So I would read constantly at work, sort of. When I had 5 minutes, I'd pick the book up. Yeah, I'd read a book every couple of weeks. I just loved it.
And what changed?
It gave me, sorry?
What changed? How did it change your life? If it did.
It gave me the confidence to go to uni.
Whoa.
Because I always thought I couldn't go to uni because I couldn't do the reading.
Right.
And it gave me the confidence. So when I was 38, I started a degree on network engineering, and which I passed. And now I run an IT help desk, which I absolutely love. It's just completely changed my life. That's
extraordinary, and passing it on to the next generation as well. I mean, what would Finton's life have been like if you hadn't been on that journey yourself? Completely different, right?
Well, luckily my partner Zara is quite.
She'd have looked after that side of things, but
yeah, exactly. Finn was already more intelligent than me by that point, anyway. So
I love this. I also love the message I just got off Matt. He says, "James, we found the only benefit of Brexit. Someone ring Rees-Mogg." It's literally you. That is extraordinary. You are this story incarnate, aren't you? Just and it's not as if anyone's to blame. No one's made a conscious decision to kind of plug up your ears and stop you from accessing stuff. But until you get that moment, in your case, Zara giving you that book, probably because she knew you so well and she knew what you liked and she knew what you liked watching, and she knew that would probably just get wheels turning inside you that had never turned before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's incredible, mate. Take care.
I think it's just finding your niche, finding that one thing.
Yes, exactly. That's it. That's why I started with Jamie Plummin Oliver and a piece of smoked salmon, because it can happen anywhere. Anyone can do it, but if it doesn't happen, it never happens. Oh, what a lovely story! Thank you, Stuart. I presume I'll get another letter when your 50th comes around. Danny is in Grimsby. Back to Danny. So just, I think, never read a book by 19. Danny, just didn't happen. Same as Stuart.
Yeah, same thing. And I thought, I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to get a small book, and I'm going to.
Why did you think that?
Why did I think what? Sorry.
That day, why did you decide to go to the library?
Because I felt so at that age, you know, your friends. They go to college and uni and they say what they know they want to do, and I had no clue at all. I was quite terrified, and I just was working and ignoring a lot of them big questions. And I thought, well, I got to do something. So I started long distance running, but I also went to the library and I picked up.
You didn't read The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner by Alan Sillitoe by any chance?
Great film.
It's a great film. It is a great film.
But I can segue into that because I got The Old Man in the Sea. And I picked it up and I started, and I was like, I'm going to see how far I can go here. And I couldn't put it down. I finished it in a wanna, and I was like, oh, that was good. Oh, that was really good. That made me want to go again. So I went to the library and just got as many as I could out and just went mad for it.
Isn't that incredible? Both you and Stuart, almost like a dam that broke, and once it broke, that was it. You were away.
But then it changed a lot, because then I thought, oh, I like stories. Oh, I quite want to work in stories. I'd like to tell them, and I like reading them and all that. So then I started on a journey to get into the film and TV industry, which was a bit foreign,
of course,
to my world and all that, and I had to move away and be the first one to do all that. But books gave me a real core of like a confidence and protection in that. And now, you know, I work in the film and TV industry, which is the bizarrest thing to say ever. But
that's lovely.
Books gave me
stories.
Everything.
Well, you're a storyteller. You just didn't realise it.
And we all are, is the thing. And the thing that breaks my heart hearing what you were saying is them kids don't know what they don't know. And I was that, you know.
That's
and
a great phrase. You don't know what you don't know. I love that. I love that. That's wonderful. It's also, what a touch, though, to start off with the Hemingway. I mean, that is just magnificent, isn't it?
I was spoiled.
And you chose it because it was short, right? It's a really thin book. It's one of the thinnest books in the library.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was getting in for, but it kind of summed up the next 10 years of my life, that pursuit and that brutality and that of changing and adapting and having to say goodbye to a lot of things, like the safety of the bubble of the working class sort of world that I was in, where the expectations were you know, being proud of regardless. But I wanted something more, and that book gave me that feeling. And I think if it was a different book, I might have put it down, but it relates to a lot.
It's the planets aligning, Danny. It's the place, that stage of your life, the right book, the right time, and the right... Oh, mate, you're going to make me get quite emotional. And I always get emotional on Make Some Noise Day, but it is, like you say, heartbreaking to read that a quarter of your peers, a quarter of white working class boys today don't spend any time at all reading outside school. And you know, if it's not going to get imbued in them in childhood, you're going to have to be very, very lucky, like Danny or like Stuart, to find the bug later in life. But 2 stories. When you do, everything changes. Here's Tim Humphrey with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:34 is the time. As you know, today is Make Some Noise Day on LBC, and right across the global family. I want to introduce you now to the kind of one of the charities that we work to support, and the kind of charity to which your donation can make a huge difference. Boxing Futures is a charity that supports isolated children and young people in Peterborough and in London, many of them from deprived communities. The programme that we're funding this year is called Chatterbox, which looks at the physical and mental health of 60 of those young people. Non-contact boxing sessions, group therapy sessions, group activities and one-to-one counselling sessions. In a moment, we'll meet 2 young people who have been supported already by Chatterbox. But first, Jamie is the operations manager at the sort of parent charity, Boxing Futures. Just maybe start by giving us a picture of one of the young people that you've helped and the kind of impact that Chatterbox intervention can have on their lives, Jamie.
Yeah, so at Boxing Futures, what we try and do is create a pathway, and actually Chatterbox, it's a pathway of programmes that support young people in social and emotional growth, and the physical and therapeutic process that we follow allows that growth. For some of the young people that we've worked with, in fact, the group that these guys have been part of, from the start of the programme to the end, 18 of those young people have now gone on to be employed or in training or education, which is something that would have been fairly difficult for them to have done at the beginning of that process.
Why boxing?
Boxing, well, I think because of the physical, I think the idea of you can go in and get that support, you can kind of go in to a gym, and that's where it kind of started from. And it's very well known, isn't it, that those young people that we're trying to access have spoken over the years about the impact that boxing had and the discipline and the support that they got on a one-to-one, but more importantly on a group level. And I think when this first started, that was the kind of idea. What can we do, not just with boxing, but that physical benefit that young people can get from that exercise?
I love it. Oliver, how did you end up there?
Well, actually, my mum passed away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, last year. And I went to the college for help, and then they recommended me to Boxing Futures after a couple of weeks of helping me.
What did you think when they said, we're going to send you to a boxing gym?
A bit nervous at first, because like my anxiety when going to like a gym or something like that, it would be horrible. Yeah.
I'm the same.
And when I actually got to the boxing, I met a few people, and I thought it was very nice.
What kind of difference has it made? What do you do when you're there, and can you measure the difference that it's made? Made you feel less lonely, less alone?
Yeah, and I feel more confident, completely more confident, because I don't think I'll be able to speak on the microphone like a year ago like I am now.
You just nicked my question. I was literally about to say, would you have been bossing the microphone in a studio like this 2 years ago? That's incredible. Melissa, what brought you to their door?
I had just moved to the UK from Uganda, so I was just having trouble connecting with people, learning the different accents and understanding people. So my mom was like, why don't you try some extracurricular activities outside, maybe get some friendships outside of college, because I was having trouble making friends in college. So it was a freshers event, and they introduced me to Boxing Futures. So the first time I was like, boxing, I told my mom maybe I should try boxing, and she was like, well, when I say try extracurriculars, I didn't mean boxing. What I had in mind. Yeah, and I was like, but wouldn't you love me to be it is non-contact, so you've been telling me to exercise more. It ticked so many boxes that at the end she just had to accept. But it's the first time I didn't go because I was so scared. Second time I went, and I was like, it's so much easier than I expected, because everyone was just so welcoming, and they're like, whatever you do outside, it doesn't matter. It's like you shed the person you're outside and just everyone just welcomes you as you are. And I know like what I'm saying, it's a mix of so many different young individuals that it gives a better perspective on so many things.
How long had you been in the room before you felt something inside you just relax?
Probably like 5 minutes.
Wow, that's what you're going for, Jamie. Yes. That sense of I'm okay here. This is sort of family almost.
Yeah, it's like what you want to say, what you don't want to say. They give you that platform to be like, I want to share this. It's your own initiative, sort of like you're not forced to be in that place.
You, I think, are doing a construction course at college, which would be very male-dominated, I imagine. I don't want to stereotype the construction.
It is sort of isolating.
So it must have been doubly tricky to sort of build connections and make friends. But you've made loads of friends at Chatterbox.
Yeah, and the thing is, it has provided sort of... Now I've met a few people like Oliver. We go to the same college, but I did know that. So like... We meet up in college sometimes, and it feels like it sort of provides... It brings the comfort from boxing to college and makes things so much easier because I know, like, I've seen Oliver at boxing. He knows me on a much deeper level than how I would find him on college. So we just meet up, and it's like that day does go by much easier than it was when, like, in a more male-dominated kind of course.
And without Chatterbox, you'd both just still be sort of satellites floating around?
Yeah, we'd be in the same college, but we wouldn't know each other at all.
What do you like most about Chatterbox, Oliver? You nodded off then, hadn't you?
I was listening. I didn't expect you to ask me. Well, sorry, repeat the question.
What do you like most about it? What are the? I mean, like, if you were selling it, if you were sort of, trying to persuade people listening to this program to make a donation to support the charity, what would you?
Speaking to new people, for me, it's not even the boxing part. I mean, the boxing's fun and everything, but I feel like speaking to new people, making new friends, feeling less like lonely.
And safe. They provide an environment in which you can do all of these things. Does anyone ever progress onto contact boxing, Jamie? Is it?
The option's there. There is a pathway for them to do that.
Be careful. Promise me you'll both be careful.
Yeah.
All right?
But that's sorry, just to say that that's exactly what we're trying to do, James, in that we kind of bring people together. We've got lots of support within the room from the coaches and staff, our psychotherapists, but actually it's about those social connections that they can then take forward into the community. It's not just about the 2 hours they're with us, it's about the connections they make with each other that then can support each other going forward for the week, the months going forward in their lives.
I'm a huge fan of therapy in all its forms and all shapes, but I mean, some people are quite cynical or sceptical about it, or they think it's a load of old bunkum. I've seen the effects it can have. Talking about your feelings can be hard until you actually start doing it, and then actually it's one of the healthiest things in the world. The group therapy sessions very good.
But the thing is, it's led by Steph, so it's more of a relaxed sort of environment where we do have sort of like unwritten agreement that what I say to you, you have your opinions about it, but it's more of a discussion. But what I have told you, I know is safe in that environment. You're not going to go around telling people what I've told you, and it's sort of that trust that we're building on, and it's further strengthens the connections we've made.
I love it. And you've been obviously dealing with bereavement and grief, Oliver, lots of really tricky things. The group therapy must help you feel a little bit more seen, a little bit more heard.
Yeah, I feel like it's good because everybody's speaking about their own problems. It makes me feel like I'm not, like, how do I put it? I'm not the only one going through stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's nice, like, caring for others and stuff like that. It makes me feel better.
I love that. Who's the better boxer? I'm not going to push you first. Sometimes I have politicians sitting in these chairs.
I am going to be confident. I want to say it's me.
I want to say it's me.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
We do spy each other, so I think like we better ourselves.
I love it. That's fantastic. Let's see how much money we can help raise for Global's Make Some Noise, which is, of course, supporting Chatterbox this year, and we can't help people like Jamie, help people like Melissa and Oliver, who then help each other and help others and go back out into the community to help everybody without you helping us in the first place. And it's really, really easy to do today. To donate £40, £30, £20 or £10, just text LBC40, LBC30, LBC20 or LBC10, no spaces, to 70766. It all goes to LBC's Make Some Noise, 100% of your donation. 16 and over only. Please seek your bill payer's permission. Standard network charges may apply, and the terms and conditions are all at makesomenoise.com. So just do it now. Text LBC40, LBC30, LBC20 or LBC10 without a space to 70766, because even a small donation can make a big difference to people living through really tough circumstances. Jamie, Oliver, Melissa, thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you.
It's been a real privilege to meet you all. And the time now is 12:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:48 is the time. Amazing. I love it. I told you could tell from my voice, I think. You could always tell if I was ever going through the motions, but that is precisely the sort of charity. Oh, I must tell you, don't use WhatsApp. The text number that you need is 70766. And I can't... It won't work if you use WhatsApp or if you text the usual LBC studio number. So you have to text LBC40, LBC30, LBC20 or LBC10 to 70766. Okay, so that is it. Text to 70766. I'm just noticing quite a few things coming into the studio that suggest you've been trying to either text it to the usual text number or using WhatsApp to send it. So it only works if you text LBC40, LBC30, LBC20 or LBC10 to 70766. Staying on the Make Some Noise tip, as it were, I can tell you that we are recording a special live episode of my chart-topping podcast, Full Disclosure. I'll be joined by a very special guest. It says here to be revealed soon, but I think I've already told you who it is. We'll soon find out. If I've accidentally told you who it is, then you're about to text me their name, and I'll realize. Anyway, don't do that. It's very unprofessional. I'll be joined by a very special. Oh yes, a very special guest to be revealed soon at the Royal Geographic Society in London on Thursday, the 19th of February. All proceeds will go to LBC's official charity, Make Some Noise. So there'll be unfiltered, honest conversation with a dedicated Q&A for you afterwards to put your questions to my guest, and even if you must, to me. If you want to buy tickets or find out more about the event, just head over to lbc.co.uk or keep an eye on the LBC app. I think there's a handy link on the LBC app that lets you donate to Make Some Noise without going through the process that I have just described. 10 to 1 is the time. A little bit more on the difference that books make, how they come into your life if you're not lucky enough to have had them in your life as a youngster. They come into your life later, and the difference that they make. Sam's in Brighton. Sam, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello, Sam.
First time I've spoken to you.
Welcome.
I listen to you every day.
Thank you.
Just to say.
That's lovely.
So I'm 57 now. I left school with no qualifications at all. My parents are both working class,
yes.
But my dad went to sea, so basically they sent me to state school. I couldn't get on at all, so they sent me to private school.
Right.
I couldn't get on at all. They sent me back to state school. Couldn't get on at all.
Oh dear.
Left school with nothing. Went to art college briefly, but I just couldn't do the GCSEs that I needed to stay there.
Crikey.
When I was 19, someone gave me a book called The Passion by Jeanette Winterson.
Oh, yes.
And for some reason I read it. It was historical fiction, and I was just totally gripped by that. And it just inspired me to want to create and write. I've always been quite good at art and stuff, and that kind of led. I was doing night classes in painting and illustration and stuff like that, and I eventually without any qualifications, but some work experience and a half-decent interview, I got in when I was 28 to go to university to do performing arts and visual practice. And so I managed to get my degree. I got a 2-1.
So you knew that you wanted to learn, and you knew that you were bright, I think, but something hadn't quite clicked until you picked up that book.
It really hadn't, and I think I'm probably dyslexic. I've never been diagnosed, and I've managed to. I have to say, I mean, this, it was that book that triggered all that kind of stuff, and I read now much more than most of my very academic friends who don't seem to have so much interest in that. But I would say that definitely when computers came in and they, automatically amended spelling and what have you. But I then went on to do a postgrad in dramatic writing and a master's in writing and personal development. And I ran writing for recovery groups for mental health service users.
You're like the perfect caller today. Well, you're knitting together some of the work that Make Some Noise does with the conversation we were having about books. And like Danny in Grimsby, it just sort of ignited some creative spark in you that was there all along, but may never have been ignited. And that's why I find these topics, these stories so powerful and so important, because it's the life not lived, isn't it? It's what would have happened if that had never been brought into your life. And you're lucky that it was. You're luckier than me because you nearly missed it. It's like a bus that I'm already on. And then you just get that little opportunity when it pulls up briefly outside or at the side of the road where you are, and you can hop on. And that's why it's class-based. That's why the relevance of the background of the boys who aren't reading is important, because you are less likely ever to be waiting at this particular bus stop if you are white working class, if you are a white working class boy, or if you're working class in general. The numbers are stark. So 25% of white working class boys had not read a book. 13% of all the other people. So that's pretty much double. And you just wonder about the missed opportunity, the missed resources, the contributions that could have been made, like the ones that Sam described. I hope we've got time for another caller, but I want to play you a little clip of Jack Thorne, who you may not know the name, but you may. He's a bit like James Graham, and they're quite... basically, if there's something brilliant on the telly or the stage at the moment and it's bang up modern, like really, really recent, chances are one of them wrote it. But he did Adolescence most recently. He's got a new version of Lord of the Flies dropping imminently, any minute now. He wrote Enola Holmes as well, the sort of Sherlock Holmes update. He's just a fascinating bloke, and he's my guest on Full Disclosure this week. We talk a bit about adolescence, we talk about his background. He actually benefited from precisely the kind of charity that Make Some Noise supports when he found himself unexpectedly and seriously ill. In your studies, move back home and lie on your back in the middle of December with the windows wide open because you were effectively, you've described it as being allergic to moving.
Yes, I was allergic to movement.
How frightened were you?
Very, and I went to see a doctor, and the doctor said, I think this might be forever. And when you hear that, and you're like, oh, okay, so everything that I've been trying to do is now gone. Everything that I want to be is no longer possible, and I've got to work out how to live this life. At the same time, my mum was making me a cake a week, and I was eating a lot because that was the only happiness. So I went from 12 to 18 stone in the space of about 5 months because I wasn't moving. And you weren't just not physically moving. You'd lost that sense that was obviously very important to you of moving towards something in life as well, whatever it may be, some unspecified but fully satisfying situation. Yes, I wanted to write by that point, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll write something really brilliant in this sort of, maybe I'll do what Chekhov did when Chekhov was exiled. Exactly. But everything I wrote was awful.
And you also, I think, alienated the friends that you'd made at Cambridge by sending them endless letters, worrying and stuff. So it was a really horrible moment. This.
Yeah, what would happen was they'd send a nice email to me. Yeah. I'd send a longer email back. They'd reply very nicely with a longer email, and then I'd almost immediately send another long email back, and they'd get exhausted by it.
Keep up,
yeah,
can you?
Yeah,
and that's it. That's your life. You're living in that room in your head.
Exactly.
And they're back at Cambridge doing all the other things you do.
And they don't want to deal with me.
And it was a theatre group for disabled people that got him back on his feet, actually, and kind of on the path that has led to the West End and even Emmys. He's still glowing, actually, because we recorded it a couple of weeks ago. He just got back from the Emmys with Stephen Graham, and when he talked about it, it was a privilege to actually witness that cast must be so tight. Stephen Graham has a habit of doing that, doesn't he? But because he co-wrote Adolescence with the man whose voice you just heard, Jack Thorne. And you can hear a lot more of his voice on Full Disclosure this week. You can also, of course, hear my interview, the sort of special episode of Full Disclosure with an incredible woman who, as you heard earlier, was lying in a hospital bed, not realising, or not, the doctors nearby not knowing that she could overhear them when they very coolly started discussing the imminent amputation of all 4 of her limbs, potentially. And she's gone on to turn that into a huge positive or Corina Hutton, setting up the charity Finding Your Feet. So before I go, one last reminder of how you can donate to Make Some Noise this year. 40, 30, 20 or £10. Just text LBC 40, LBC 30, LBC 20 or LBC 10. No spaces to 70766. 100% goes to LBC's Make Some Noise. 16 and over only. Please seek the bill payer's permission. Standard network charges may apply. Terms and conditions are at makesomenoise.com. That's LBC 40, LBC 30, LBC 20 or LBC 10. No spaces to 70766. If you missed any of today's show, listen on Global Player or the LBC app. Not just the radio shows, but also, of course, the podcasts, including Full Disclosure and James O'Brien Daily. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Tom Swarbrick will be with you at 4. Sheila Fogarty is with you now.
James O'Brien on LBC.